Wuthering Waves is almost here, and so many people are looking at this game, including myself, where team building kind of feels pointless. And I spoke about that briefly in a previous video, but the general gist of that is that so many players, so many videos have come out of blank solos this, so-and-so character solos the entire game, hardest content in the game solos this. And something that I want to point out is that in any other game that we've played, whether that be Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Honkai Impact, or even Punishing Gray Raven, there's a particular metric that we always use within the game to classify what counts as clearing something. And as of right now, no character has actually been able to solo clear anything, clearing constituting the 3 stars in Tower of Adversity. And it is for that reason that I think we don't truly understand what constitutes proper team building in this game. In today's video, I'll do my best to break down the basics of combat, the team building aspects and structures that I believe stand out the most, and where I see team buildings or teams, the structure of teams, going in the future. Because if it's left like this, team building in Wuthering Waves could become a massive problem. So combat is actually pretty simple, but I'll break this down the same way that I would a fighting game. All characters have what is considered a basic attack, or rather they have a string of commands that everybody in the game has, right? Basic attack, heavy attack, mid attack, or mid-air attack, dodge attack, whatever. And those things are pretty simple. Your basic attack is like your normal attack. That's your left click or possibly your X button or R1 button, whatever it is on controller that you're going to be using. This is the one that you'll be mashing a lot. Usually gives you a string of attacks from anywhere between 3 to 6 normal hits, and oftentimes causes the elemental damage of the character. The cool thing about Wuthering Waves is that some characters have unique properties that other characters don't have. In particular, Encore having a different variation of her basic attack, whereas two other characters only have the 1 string of basic attack. Next up, we have a heavy attack. This is the one that when you hold, right, you hold your attack, you hold the left click, and then it gives you a more powerful attack, and the animation might be different. In Gion's case, it's a thrust. Similar to Encore and how she has different basic attacks, Gion has different heavy attacks, and these come from activating his install, being in midair, or doing a heavy attack after doing a particular function. Next is a midair attack, which I feel like is pretty straightforward. You're in the middle of the air and then you press the attack button and you do an attack. Now, some characters like Ling Yang have midair attacks and they excel at midair attack combat. In fact, his forte skill is all about midair attacks, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. After that, you have a dodge counter, which is just after you make a dodge, do an attack move, and then you get what would be a basic attack turned into a dodge counter, and these come with their own properties. Higher damage, more energy regenerated. Some characters even position themselves differently, like Danjin, and she even has her own specific dodge counter property that other characters don't. The resonance skill is going to be your basic skill, your elemental skill, or just a straight up skill like in Star Rail. These are special actions from the character that help them build up more energy or more forte, and they hold more unique properties in exchange for a timed cooldown. After that, you have Resonance Liberation, which can be considered your burst or ultimate. And you know that's what it is because you have a cinematic action, and that gives you a more prominent attack once your resonance energy is fully charged. Liberation energy is also not determined by the on-field character specifically, but by whoever receives it. So if character X is on the screen and they have 12% ERR, but you have a Verena in the back and she has 50% ERR, she will receive 50% of whatever is being shared on field. There's a particular math behind it that I know Rivenus has the charts for. I'll link that in the description down below. But for basics, I don't want to get into like the nitty-gritty math behind a lot of the stuff because you're not thinking about the numbers while you're playing the game. You're just looking at what happens. So now we can talk about the Forte circuit, which is going to be that Forte skill that I talked about earlier, or the special property, a hidden ability, if you will. And this is one of the key defining mechanics to Wuthering Waves that will more than likely confuse you all of the time because every single character has a different Yu-Gi-Oh card's worth of text to understand. These basically dictate how you want to try playing a character by themselves or on a team. A good example of this is going to be Kakarot's Forte circuit, giving him an entirely new set of attacks both inside and outside of his install. And just for clarification purposes, an install is basically a transformative state, but it's temporary. Think of this like Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi, or even some of the more modernized fighting games like Guilty Gear Strive, where a character activates their ultimate or performs a certain action, they gain access to new moves, new properties, more damage, more speed, anything of the sort. And it allows them to do things they weren't doing before for a higher cost, but more damage. After that, we have the intro and outro skills, aka concerto. I know there's a proper way to say that, I just can't say it. Now, these are some of the more prominent and most important features to look at in a character's kit, especially if you're looking at this from a team building perspective. For instance, The reason Varina is considered one of the best characters in the game is because her outro skill boosts the entire team's attack by 15% for 30 full seconds while healing you based on her own attack for the next 6 seconds. Then you add that on top of the Echo set, the outglowing healing, and that boosted again by another 15%, basically giving you a 30% attack boost for 30 seconds while also healing you. Like, it's dumb. After those, we have inheritance, or your passive abilities, and these are passive abilities that trigger from specific actions, like using a heavy attack, perfect dodging at the right time, using a basic attack in midair, so on and so forth. This is different for every character, and it's not triggered by the same thing for everybody. Good example would be Jian. When he hits an enemy target, he gains a crit rate increase for X amount of time, and that stacks up to 2 times. So essentially giving himself a permanent crit rate boost, which, I mean, that kind of helps you with gear, but we'll get into that later. Last of the basic mechanics is going to be dodging and parrying. So a parry happens when you slam the enemy with an attack at the perfect timing of that golden circle clock appearing on their body, and then this does a good solid chunk of toughness damage and gives back a bit more energy. A perfect dodge is what happens whenever you dodge the enemy's attack at the right time. You see a little flash, things slow down, and then that turns your basic attack into a dodge counter. This is basically a new attack granting you a higher damage output, more energy, and more toughness damage done than a normal basic attack. And so with all that out of the way, we can finally start talking about the basics of team building and how I believe teams will be structured going forward. First and foremost, this is mostly geared towards players who want to optimize their gameplay to the best of their accounts. If you only care about having fun with your favorite character 1 and 2 and then adding waifu number 3 later down the road, you can totally do that and it's fine. My advice doesn't mean you can't do something, it just might not be optimal in a meta conversation. Normally, a full team consists of 3 characters, but that doesn't mean you always need 3 units to make a complete team. This is something that I'm still testing, but my tests have been proving successful so far. Some characters, like Kakarot and Yanlin, make an absurdly stupid team combo together that adding a 3rd character would hinder a more execution-heavy player's DPS. What that means is someone who is very adept and skilled at the game. They have a high execution level to be able to do things that a normal player would not be able to do. And in that particular instance, swapping to a character that reduces the DPS they would be doing for even the slightest second may result in a less favorable team output that they would like. Meanwhile, other characters like Encore or Danjin don't have dedicated supports yet, and they're so strong with high execution that they can be more successful solo or duo than on a full team. Again, take that with a grain of salt, especially if you do not have a high execution level, and that's okay. Most fighting game players admit that. Actually, we lie and say we do, but we really don't, so we lose the game in a tournament, but whatever. Point being is that not everybody has a high execution level, and that's okay. You can earn it. So with that tidbit out of the way, when building teams, it's best to focus on full synergies at who does what for each character. I personally don't like the 99 terms being used by a lot of the community, but Rivenus and Sydney have used these particular ones, and I like them the best. Direct buffers and indirect buffers. Direct buffers, or sub DPSs, directly buff the incoming character, while indirect buffers hit the entire team. And as of right now, those are going to be Baiji if she has the 4-piece Echo healing set, and then Varina just naturally. Now, me personally, I refer to direct buffers as sub DPSs since that's what I'm more familiar with in any other MMO or RPG, because that's what they're called. So if you hear me say a sub DPS, 9 times out of 10, that's what I'm referring to. Now with team building, it's important to pay attention to any matching attributes as well, not just elements. Yanlin, for instance, buffs electro damage, which is awesome for herself and Kalturo, but a character like Mortify increases heavy attack damage, which is huge for a character like Jian, whose liberation install changes the properties of his attack to count as heavy attack damage. Whereas other characters, when they use their liberation, that counts as just raw liberation damage. So keep that in mind when you're looking at characters that you like and then you're building teams around them and trying to find a support. You'd be surprised at some of the 4 stars and their outro skills being able to help one of your main DPS characters. Next, we have rotations, which aren't as static as you might think either, at least not without some type of perfect gameplay. And this is due to the fact that the enemies are active enough to beat the crap out of you that there will always be 100 different reasons why you won't get a perfect rotation, and you need to learn how to adapt on the fly. Not everybody in the game has full invulnerability to ignore getting hit, but the basic premise would be lead with your indirect buffer, go into your sub DPS, and then go into your main DPS, rinse and repeat. You definitely want to pay attention to the buff time limits and your speed of execution. really gonna suck if you don't swap off from your sub DPS fast enough to take advantage of the big team buff that your indirect buffer just gave the entire team. And so lastly, I'll talk about echoes and weapons, whereas I won't go over every single echo or weapon possibility and the best things for every character. I'm just going to explain the thought process and concept behind this so that you can adapt and use this for your own account. The way the ecosystem works is based off a point system. So you can have like 4-3-2-2-1 or 4-2-2-2-2-1, whatever. It accumulates over time. And the higher your level is, the more you have or the ability to unlock that cap of what you can use. And ideally you would have the golden echo, your overlord boss, if you will, the 5-star. That one's going to be the very first one, the number one, the one that you're going to use for your character. They swap into and do whatever it is they want. Then you have some purples, maybe some blues, and then some greens. But what you're looking for is the echo set, which is similar to the Genshin Impact artifact set, or in Star Rail, your relic set. There's always a 2-piece and a 4-piece, and some of them have some different things. I think I saw a 5-piece during the CBT2, but I could be wrong. Point being is that this helps the entire team or just that character do the function that you're trying to get that character to do. Don't stress over it too much, because early game, none of this stuff matters to the point where you have to get it or else you're gonna lose and your account's a failure and you ruined your account. No, you're good. Chill. I will mention though the weapons, and this is just a theory of mine. Take this with a grain of salt. Don't like flip out about this either. As of right now, I believe weapons are going to be some of the most important pieces of gear in the game, either early on, not early as in like you start the game, but I mean like after a patch or two, and then moving forward from there. Just like in PGR, they make the weapon banner in PGR 30 pity. In this game, it's guaranteed. It's still like 80 pity or 70 pity, something like that, but it's guaranteed 100% on that weapon banner. You're gonna get it. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no 50-50. There's no 75-25. You're guaranteed to get that weapon, and it has its own currency. The reason I think this is gonna be important is because no game in their right mind would put something in the game and it's not important, or they want you to pay attention to it. And I understand making money, but I don't think that's the case here. Some of these weapons are absolutely busted. In particular, the 5-star standard weapons. While they look weak because of the ERR and some of them have been reworked, like the Great Blade that's going to be used for Kalturo, which is now perfect for him, it's really the energy regeneration rate that changes characters' kits completely. A character like Verena, who needs a lot of energy regeneration rate to complete a full proper rotation without taking up too much time on the field, is going to love the 5-star standard rectifier used for her, giving her so much energy, versus a 3 or 4-star option that's free, not the battle pass, that doesn't have the energy requirement or energy regeneration rate attached to it. So just keep that in mind when you're building teams, when you're looking at characters and you're going over who needs what or what they can use and what the weapon effect is, along with whatever substats exist on said weapon and echoes. Usual rule of thumb is you're looking for attack percent, crit rates, and crit damages. Supports want the energy. So as a final recap and just some quick tips for everything going on in the game, I would say prioritize building your main DPS character first. That would include the weapon and the gear. So if I'm going to main Kakarot, I'm going to prioritize building Kakarot to his fullest potential until Yinlin gets here. That way, once Yinlin gets here, I can start focusing on her immediately and possibly have Baiji or Verena as my support if that's what I was going for. And the same when you go for Jian, where I can focus purely on Jian, get his limited weapon, attach that to him, and he's good. There's no more that I need to do. I don't have to worry about a new weapon coming out 5 months down the road that's going to be perfect for Jian, because my Jian as of right now would be complete and I could focus on new characters, so on and so forth. It's much easier to build 1 or 2 characters at a time that share similarities, whether that be the gear that they can swap between in the Tower of Adversity, or if they share Ascension materials and you can just kind of double up and get more of that. The game heavily contradicts itself in a way that feels punishing for players. On one end, we know an in-game mode like Tower of Adversity requires 3 full teams to use, but on the other end, we know building a single character does take anywhere from 40 to 60 days without Echo RNG farming in mind. At least this is the way that it was based in CBT2. So if you care about min-maxing or optimization, it's definitely going to be important for you to scout out what you're looking to build ahead of time and plan it out. Weapons, echoes, go into your friend's world to farm specific echoes, world hopping, characters that you're trying to build, so on and so forth. The earlier, the better. And that's going to do it for me today, guys. Hopefully this team building and basic combat guide was enough for you to understand the basics at a more basic level while still giving you a little bit of a taste of the intricacies that could happen in the game. I don't know about you, but it's going to be really hard for me to build multiple teams at a time when a game like this has so many premium resources that are that expensive. But that don't mean I'm not gonna build Mommy Yinlin. Come on now. Like the video, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Know you later.